Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Brief explanation. I work as a mobile cell phone repair tech for a company contracted through an insurance company. We handle insurance repairs for all major carriers, but we don't work for the carriers directly. Sometimes customers request that we meet at their carrier store because they are about to trade in their phone. A screen cannot be broken if they want to get full trade-in value. A couple months ago, I had just finished the repair for a woman and brought her phone into the store from my work van where I was fixing it. I gave her my spiel about the warranty and whatnot and got her to sign the paperwork. As I was walking out, a surprisingly non-caring looking woman put her hand out in front of me and said, "Excuse me, I'm next in line." I had crossed in front of the line to get to the door, so I assumed she thought I was trying to cut in. "Oh, sorry, I'm on my way out," I said with a smile and started walking again. She stuck her hand out again and said, "But there are still customers here and I'm next in line." It took me a moment of just staring at her before I realized what was going on. My uniform is a black polo with our company logo on the front, and I was wearing black jeans with it. Nowhere on my uniform does it have any sort of carrier logo on it. I used to have a lanyard with the Samsung and Apple logos on it, but I stopped using it because people were confusing me with a store employee. The employees in the store were all wearing blue and tan. In the time it took me to realize what was going on and process it, she assumed she had caught me because now she had a smirk. "Sorry, I don't work here." Or at least that's what I wanted to say. I got to sorry and she cut me off and immediately launched into a drawn-out story about why she needed another phone for her mother-in-law, who isn't tech-savvy. She wanted to give her son's phone to her mother-in-law because it's an older iPhone, so it's easier to use, but her son isn't ready for an upgrade yet, and on and on. She kept talking without stopping, so I couldn't cut in. There was enough chatter in the store that to talk over her, I'd have to raise my voice fairly loud, which I didn't want to do because I didn't want my company looking bad. Finally, she got to the end of her story and asked what I could do to help her. I smiled and told her I'd snag a store employee for her, but she stepped in front of me and said, "You're working with me right now. I don't want you to palm me off to someone else who I'll have to explain this to all over again just so you can get lost for 20 minutes. Up to this point, we've both been relatively respectful to each other, but as soon as she said this, it flipped my switch. I slowly and deliberately looked over at the counter and raised my hand. As luck would have it, the manager saw me and made eye contact. As I was doing this, my new friend snapped in my face and half shouted, "Hey, I'm talking to you, sir." The manager got to us and immediately picked up on what was going on since me and the other techs from my company, are in his store every week or so he recognizes me. "What can I help you with, ma'am?" he asked with a smile. "Well, you can start by reprimanding this lazy little jerk, and then you can give me a discount." The manager nodded and put his hand out to try and guide her towards the counter, telling her he'd love to talk with her about it at his station. The woman grabbed my shirt sleeve and said, "Well, bring him to. He already knows my problem." The manager just nodded and said, "Yes, but he's not a store worker." That's not a lie, and he has other appointments to get to. She sneered at him, then at me, and kind of tossed the wad of my sleeve she had and shouted, "Well, he could have told me instead of wasting my time." He guided her off to the counter and I made a break for the door. I finally got back in my van, fired it up and queued up maps to my next appointment. Since I was parked, I decided to check some messages and see what social media notifications I had. I must have been sitting there for a while because all of a sudden, I heard banging on my van. It was this crazy woman slapping the hood of my van with one hand and flipping me off with the other as she walked in front of my van. She toddled off, got into her car, and sped out of the parking lot. Not exactly a out of work here, but she was totally complaining to the wrong person. Some years ago, when I recently got hired at my current hospital and was assigned to the emergency room, I'm a general practitioner, I had an encounter with a woman who refused to understand that not any person with scrubs and a white coat can treat a patient. To give you an idea of the setting, the ER observation unit was a giant square room with around 20 beds in total, separated by curtains. In the middle was the main counter where I and another doctor had our computers alongside the whole nursing team. General practitioners like me were in charge of patients who had not been hospitalized or were being treated by another service. Nevertheless, because our unit had the most amount of beds, it was not uncommon for some patients who were not our responsibility to be assigned one until they could go to the correct unit. It was 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, and my coworker and I had just ended our round and were updating the medical records when a woman, let's call her Louisa, came to the counter. "Excuse me, you didn't check my dad. We have been here for 2 hours. I'm sorry, what's the bed number, please?" 109. Let me see in the system. Oh, I get it. Sorry, ma'am, but it says here your father is being treated by the internal medicine group. I will call him to see when they are coming. Thanks. I asked one of the nurses if she could call the internists to tell them they had a pending evaluation in our unit, and then continued with my work. 20 minutes later, Louisa came back again, asking if I could see her dad. Is there something wrong? If a patient in my unit is decompensated, I could treat him even if I was not his assigned doctor. No, he's fine, but no one has come to see him. I will try again. This time I personally called the internal medicine office and told the internist about the patient in bed 109. He said he would be there after finishing floor duty. To make a long story short, for the next 4 hours, I had Louisa coming over and over every 20 minutes to see if I could attend to her dad. I repeatedly told her no and tried to contact his doctor multiple times by calling, sending a nurse, and even going to the internal medicine office myself, only to be rebuffed because they were busy. I think both Louisa and I were on our last nerves when a final clash occurred. It was 12 o'clock and lunchtime for me, so I got up from the counter. I was midway to the exit door when Louisa jumped in front of me. Like a literal jump. It was quite hilarious in retrospect. Where are you going? Lunch. You can't go. No one has seen my dad. Ma'am, I already told you a dozen times that he is not my patient. I have tried multiple times to get his doctor here, but he won't come back. I cannot do anything else. Then why the heck are you here if you can't do anything for someone sick? He's going to die because you are just lazy. That's not what's happening. I don't even know what your dad has. I knew the main diagnosis, but not all that could be attached. See? You're useless. That's why health is so messed up. Useless doctors like you stealing our money and doing nothing. Listen, woman. You don't have to be... Do something or I will sue you. Fine. But shut up for God's sake. This may not sound serious, but by treating a patient's family like that, I could have been in very big trouble. We are taught to be tolerant to the maximum point, and even then, exploding like that is not good. Also, keep in mind that all the shouting had attracted a lot of attention, and at least 10 or more people saw the scene. That would be a fun talk with HR. Louisa was as shocked as I was, but I decided to take the opportunity to tell her to follow me. She complied without any more shouting. I guided her to the internal medicine office and literally shoved her inside, telling her they were the guys she needed to talk to. According to the grapevine, the nurses, it was like I had thrown a hungry coyote into the henhouse. Total chaos. After eating something and calming myself down, I came back to my workplace, and surprisingly enough, Louisa was there waiting for me to apologize. We both understood the situation had been very stressful for both of us, and it got out of our hands. No complaints were made, and luckily no one else reported me, so my indiscretion was forgotten before it reached the higher-ups. Her father was moved to the internal medicine floor, so after that I never saw her again. You could say this was a happy ending of this long story. It all started when a massive storm was heading towards our town. The weather reports were constantly warning us about its trends, advising everyone to stock up on supplies and prepare for the worst. I had been watching the news diligently and decided to prepare as much as possible. I bought extra food, water, batteries, and other essentials to ensure my family and I could weather the storm safely. We live in a neighborhood governed by an HOA, and while they usually handle things like lawn maintenance rules and parking regulations, I never expected them to become a problem during a storm. But as it turns out, I couldn't have been more wrong. On the day the storm hit, the wind was howling and rain was pouring down in sheets. The power had gone out and we were relying on our generator to keep the essentials running. I was in the garage making sure everything was secure when I heard loud banging on my front door. Curious and a bit anxious, I walked to the front door and looked through the peephole. To my shock, I saw 3 members of the HOA board standing on my porch, drenched from the rain. They were holding flashlights and one of them, Ken, was waving around what looked like a crowbar. I opened the door just a crack and shouted over the storm, "What are you doing here? It's dangerous to be out in this weather." Ken pushed his way to the front, shouting back at me, "We need to talk. Open the door." I hesitated but eventually opened the door enough for them to step inside. The moment they were in, Ken started ranting. "We know you have supplies, and the HOA had decided that it's only fair to distribute them among the residents. We're taking what we need." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me? These are my supplies. I bought them for my family. You can just come in here and take them." Rudy, another HOA member, added, "This is an emergency and the HOA has the authority to take necessary actions to ensure everyone's safety." I was livid. "You don't have the right to break into my home and steal from me. Get out now." Ken raised his crowbar and for a moment I was genuinely afraid he was going to use it. "Listen, we can do this the easy way or we can do it the hard way. We're not leaving without those supplies." Feeling cornered and desperate, I decided to stand my ground. "If you don't leave right now, I am calling the police." Rudy laughed. "Good luck with that. The phone lines are down and even if you could call, the police are too busy dealing with real emergencies. Now step aside." I stood my ground, refusing to let them intimidate me. "No, this is my house. These are my supplies. You need to leave. Now." The third HOA member, Joe, who had been quiet until now, tried to reason with me. "Look, we just need a few things to get through the storm. We're all neighbors here. We should be helping each other." I shook my head. "I have a family to take care of. I can't risk running out of supplies because you did not prepare. You had the same warnings we did." Just then, my wife came downstairs holding our baby son in her arms. She looked at the HOA members concerned. "What's going on here?" Ken took a step forward, pointing his crowbar at her. "We're taking some supplies. Step aside, lady." That was the last straw. I stepped in front of my wife and son, shielding them from Ken. "That's enough. Get out of my house before I make you leave." There was a tense moment where I thought things might get violent, but then Joe put his hand on Ken's shoulder and said, "Let's go. This isn't worth it." Reluctantly, Ken lowered his crowbar and the 3 of them left, shouting back at me, "This isn't over. We'll be back." I slammed the door behind them and locked it, shaking with anger and fear. My wife hugged me tightly, our baby still in her arms. "What are we going to do?" she asked. I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "We'll stay inside, keep everything locked, and hope the storm passes quickly. If they come back, we will deal with it then." The storm continued to rage throughout the night, but thankfully, the HOA members did not return. We spent the next couple of days hunkered down, making sure everything was secure and trying to stay as safe as possible. The storm caused significant damage to the neighborhood, but we were managing just barely. 2 days after the storm started, just as we were starting to think the worst was over, I heard a noise outside. It was around dusk and the power was still out, so the house was dimly lit by our flashlights and a few candles. I looked out the window and saw the 3 HOA members sneaking around the side of my house. This time, they didn't even bother to knock. They started trying to force open a window on the ground floor. I felt a surge of anger, and I felt enough was enough. I ran upstairs to my bedroom where I kept my shotgun, grabbed it, and went to the upper room window that overlooked the side of my house. I opened the window just a crack, aimed the shotgun just past him, and fired a warning shot into the air. The loud bang echoed and the three of them froze, looking up in shock. "Get away from my house! This is your only warning." One of them screamed, "He's got a gun! He's gonna kill us!" Another, trying to keep his composure but clearly terrified, yelled back, "Put the gun down! We're just here for supplies!" I fired another shot, this time into the ground near them. "The next one won't miss. Get out of here now." They didn't need any more convincing. The three of them scrambled away, stumbling over each other in their haste to get away. For the rest of the night, I kept watch, a shotgun close at hand, but they didn't come back. The next day was calm, and it seemed the storm, both literal and metaphorical, had finally passed. When it was safe to do so, I went to the police station with the footage my wife had recorded with her phone of them trying to break in. The footage clearly showed the 3 HOA members attempting to break into my house and me firing warning shots to scare them off. I explained everything to the officers, from the first confrontation to their last attempt. I want to press charges. That's gotta be breaking and entering, attempted theft, and other charges. They need to be held accountable. The police took my statements and reviewed the footage. Given the evidence, they acted quickly. The following day, police cars arrived in the neighborhood one by one. All 3 of them were arrested. The whole neighborhood watched as they were taken from their homes in handcuffs. As the police led them away, one of them shouted, "This isn't over! You'll pay for this!" But I knew better. The law was on my side, and the rest of the neighborhood now saw them for what they are. Entitled bullies who thought they could take whatever they wanted, even in a time of crisis. As for my family and me, we were safe, and I knew that I had done the right thing by standing up to these bullies, protecting my home, and sending these rats running. 3 years ago, I was at the local grocery store with my college friends. A little side note, I am autistic, and it's very uncomfortable for me when others touch me or speak to me aggressively. My friends went to the chip aisle to search for a particular brand of chips they liked, while I went to gather ingredients for queso. It's important to note that I was wearing a green shirt and the same shade employees wore, but I was also wearing ratty jeans and sneakers. The scene is set, a single 19-year-old gangly female reaching for some microwavable cheese blocks. Suddenly, I was whirled around by what I can only describe as a Karen Harvey from heck. Poorly dyed black hair, spray-on tan, and the works. "You, where are the gardening supplies? I've been looking everywhere for an employee, and here you are, probably not on break." "Oh, this is a grocery store, ma'am. They most likely don't stock supplies for gardening. Also, I don't work here. Employees wear green shirts with black vests and name tags." She scoffed. "Nonsense, you're new, aren't you? Didn't listen during training? Well, I am going to find your manager, and you, little missy, are coming with me." At this point, Karen grabbed my upper arm hard and practically dragged me from my intended purchase. I was shocked and scared, and eventually my brain realized this was a danger zone situation, and I started struggling and telling her to let me go calmly but firmly. "Ma'am, please, I don't work here. Even if I did, this is Store X. They don't stock gardening tools." I was cut off by her sharply striking my face. She peered at me as if I were some troublemaking, lazy teen that had gone unnoticed in the workplace. "Listen, young lady, where I come from, we had to work hard to get where we are. You parading around acting like you're on break is going to come to an end with me, understand? Now be a good girl for once and let me talk to your boss." I waited, tearing up quietly on a bench while my friends ran up to me. They comforted me, with one of them saying that I should press charges for assault. Heck yes, I'm charging this weirdo. The manager walked over, assessed my appearance, and told Karen, who hit me, that no, I do not work here. And before Karen could retort, I spoke up. "Sir, this woman has hit me and made threats against me. Can you call the police and have them see the security footage?" The manager looked shocked. "Ma'am, is this true?" "Certainly not. This little girl told me to get lost when I asked for assistance." I couldn't believe the audacity of this lady. "Well, this is a serious accusation, so I am calling the cops anyway." Karen turned tail and bolted. My friends managed to coerce me into leaving the store and we went back to my apartment to eat and watch TV. Later, I got a house call from the cops with Karen in handcuffs. Turns out she had been shoplifting a mat store for a little under a month by coercing younger college age employees to check her out and forget to ring up things like expensive cuts of meat, bottles of drinks, and so on. The employees were all too scared to do anything because she had a photo ID of the regional manager who was her brother, and she claimed he would fire them if anything was reported. I told the cops my statement and they took it straight to her brother, who, despite being close to her, pressed charges for theft, assault, and other grievances. From what I can tell, Karen goes in and out of jail these days for minor crimes. I have worked in hotels for a very long time and have plenty of friends in the same business. One of my friends is Caroline. We had lunch this week and she told me about a guest who earned the jerk tax. The jerk tax is when a customer is a rude jerk, so we charge them the maximum amount possible. Caroline is a fierce light-skinned Latina queen who was raised in the US and did amazingly well in school. She is completely bilingual. A young Latina Karen arrived at her hotel with two bridesmaids to tour the suites. Caroline gave her the tour and asked all the appropriate questions. Caroline found that they planned to have a bachelorette party. She explained that the hotel had a no-party policy as the increased noise levels from parties disturbed the other guests. Karen said, "Don't worry, we are going to the bars. We will only be sleeping here." One of the bridesmaids said in Spanish, "But what about the plan for the party?" And Karen replied with, "Forget this old witch. We will do what we planned, and she will never know." Caroline admitted being called old hurt. She made the reservation for Karen at the maximum rate. She also put in the reservation notes that the guest was informed of the no-party policy and made sure she signed it at check-in. The weekend of the bachelorette party arrived and the second shift front desk representative called her to tell her what happened. Karen arrived with 15 loud, screaming girls and tons of bags. The front desk guy gave her the no-party policy to sign. She signed it without reading it. By 8 p.m., there had been a noise complaint from the neighboring room about the bachelorette party. He called a room and warned them that there had been a noise complaint, and per the no-party policy, a second complaint would result in them being evicted from the property. Whoever answered the phone decided to hang up. About 30 minutes later, the front desk representative saw more people in cosplay that were obviously coming for a party. He called his manager and told him that this crew was going to be kicked out soon. Within 15 minutes of the arrival of those people, the front desk representative was fielding tons of noise complaint calls. His manager arrived shortly afterward and headed straight to the room to evict Karen and her crew. They refused to leave, so the manager called the police. The police told him to leave the hotel. Karen tried to explain to the policeman that she paid for the room, so she could do anything she wanted in there. They gave her 5 minutes to get off the property or be arrested for trespassing. They gathered their stuff and got down to the lobby in about 15 minutes. Once there, Karen demanded her money back for the room, threatened to leave bad reviews, and threatened to sue the hotel. The manager showed her the no-party policy that she signed. It said that if we got 2 noise complaints, the guest would be evicted from the property with no refunds. She was furious, and she started throwing pens from the desk at the manager. The police put her in cuffs. One of the bridesmaids talked to the police and convinced them that they would get Karen off the property and would not return. Karen is now threatening to sue the hotel and the police. The police allowed them to leave with a caution not to return. The manager went to check the room for damages and found quite a bit. So Karen's jerk tax was a $349 room rate for a room she didn't get to use, $1,150 in room damages, and a lifetime no trespassing warning for that hotel. Some backstory. I used to work for a computer repair company that did warranty work for several of the major PC brands, Dell, IBM, HP, and so on. We'd receive our jobs around 8 a.m., contact customers 3 times between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. for guaranteed same-day service, and then at 5 p.m. we close out our calls for the day. At each call, we document that an attempt was made, and if there are any questions about it, they can pull up our phone records. It's Christmas Eve and I'm working as usual. In my bucket are 2 calls for the day. At 9 a.m., I contacted the first with no problem, and they wanted service on the 28th due to going out of town. No big deal. We've got 5 days to complete the call. The second customer didn't answer, so I left a voicemail and went about my day. At 11:30, I called again and left the same voicemail. Then again at 1 was the same result. Great, my day was now free. I could go visit family. I drove north from my home city, where we were routed from for work, about 40 miles away. Around 4:45, I got a call from my supervisor, let's call him Steve, basically screaming at me that I had made no attempts to contact the second customer and that she escalated the call to Dell. Pretty sure that was a PC maker. That is a very serious thing to have happened with our company at the time. 3 unresolved escalations resulted in immediate termination. By the time I got off the phone with Steve, it was 5 p.m., so I called the customer again. Hi, this is me with company name X. I am calling about your Dell laptop. I see by our records that you were having issues with getting no Wi-Fi signal. I'd like to set up a time on the 26th to come repair that for you. When will be a good time?
Are you kidding me? I've been home all day waiting for you to get here, and you won't come until the 26th? I need this fixed tonight. I signed up for internet as a Christmas gift for my kids. You've ruined Christmas for them, you piece of trash. You need to get out here now and fix this as soon as possible.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, but it's after 5. It's Christmas Eve and I'm already with my family. She hangs up. I stared at the phone for a second before telling my family what had happened. Not 2 minutes later, Steve called me again saying that there was a second escalation against me and that I needed to leave to get this call resolved tonight. I called the customer and after feeling the smugness radiate off her over the phone, I told her that I was 2.5 hours away and would be there as soon as I could be. Obviously, I was getting mad at the turn of events. Fast forward, I arrived at her house, which was 64 miles from my home city. 104 miles from my family's house. Roughly 2 hours later, only to be greeted in a driveway by this self-absorbed woman. She stood there smiling smugly at me saying, "Next time, call customers like you're supposed to." I pointed out to her that I had phone records proving that I had, and that I'd like to get this over with quickly so I could salvage what I could of the holiday. She led me into the house where I was confronted by a very large group of people. She set me up in the dining room and I proceeded to replace the motherboard and wireless card, all while listening to everyone in the living room tell stories. I finished, booted up the laptop, fixed all the basic input/output system settings, and went into Windows. To my surprise, there was no Wi-Fi detected. I checked all the settings and, as a good measure, I pulled out my phone. And I did a search on there. Nothing. I asked the lady where the router was set up so that I could check to see if it was broadcasting, and I swear I can't make this up.
Oh, they are coming on the 26th to set all that up.
They are coming on the 26th to set all that up? As calmly as I could, I packed everything up and told her good night. You ask, how is this a revenge story? Well, across the street was a gas station where I pulled in to a point that I could see her house, but they'd have a hard time seeing me. Next, I made a call to US Immigration and Customs Enforcement and to the local police department, telling them that I had just done a service call to a place that was housing numerous illegal immigrants and at least 8 dozen children. You gotta think of the children, right? I set up my dash cam and waited the 15 minutes for the first wave of blue lights to appear. I sat there watching at least 15 people being hauled out in cuffs with a gleam in my eye. The best part was a woman standing out in the middle of her yard, screaming at the top of her lungs that it was Christmas and how dare they take her family away. I think she got wise to me when I pulled away after the cops and US Immigration and Customs Enforcement left, but I didn't care.
I countered the escalations the next day with proof of my calling and never heard from her again. Edit to address a few comments. 1. This job was paid per call. If I had 6 jobs in my bucket at 8 a.m. and all 6 answered/called back before 1 p.m., then I could be working as late as 8 p.m. If none of those calls answered, then as of 1 p.m. my day was completely free. 2. I wish I still had the footage from the dashcam. Sadly, the hard disk drive it was on fried a few years ago, and I have broken the golden rule by not backing it up elsewhere. 3. By nature, I am a pretty laid-back person. I tend to let bygones be bygones. Had this lady been nice, called me back instead of escalating twice in order to get her way, and not been insulting me constantly while I was there, I would have probably just done the job and left. Coupling all that with the fact that she didn't have the internet turned on yet, so I couldn't verify it was even broken in the first place, and I feel she got what she deserved. Even though I fought the escalations, I still received a major dip in my call logs for the next 3 weeks while they sorted it all out. This obviously affected my pay a great deal.